Okay, so we're going to look at two different theories on population, just to kind of cover the material you're looking at the moment. So, when we look at population, we're going to look at the world population, what factors actually affect the population of the world, and what would an optimist or a pessimist say? So, what would be an optimistic view or a pessimistic view about world population? We look at a specific case study, for example, Easter Island, and decide if we think that could happen again. So Easter Island is a particularly interesting case study there. And also, a question for yourself: are you an optimist about this or a pessimist? What do you think, and how does that affect how you lead your day-to-day life? So Malthus and Boserup, pessimist or optimist. So Malthus' theory, this was formed around the end of the 18th century. So his idea was that population growth is a bad thing. Yeah, if population is left unchecked, you can see this blue line going all the way like this. What happens? What do you notice about the population growth and the food supply? Are they going up at the same rate? No. Yeah, so food supply does grow, but nowhere near the same rate. So if food does not keep up with population, what do you think the issue could be there? But population grows faster than food supply. So people will go hungry, people will go starving. There'll be less resources overall. Now, Bostrup's theory is completely different to that. So let's have a look. Look at the graph here on Malthus' theory. Here's his idea of what you think would happen. Now, Boserup actually was a female researcher, not a man with a pipe like this. Um, if you see the graph here, you can see a difference in the lines how they go up. So Boserup said food supply would increase to accommodate population growth. So if a population found they were having a food shortage, then they would find different ways of increasing their supply. So this might be improving their technology, better seeds, better farming methods. So what you tend to see is that actually the food supply will always keep pace with the population. So which of these do you think is the more optimistic theory? So you have Malthus's theory, and then you have Boserup's theory. Boserup's theory seems to be the more optimistic view. Yeah, that actually we can, we will be able to survive this even if our population gets much higher. We will find ways of increasing food output. So through things like maybe genetic modification of foods, increased efficiency in farms, and these kind of shortages will actually improve our output. You tend to see this in lots of areas of life, where actually when there is a shortage of something, and when it's in finite supply, generally this tends to make people innovate and be more creative and actually come up with much better ideas. If you're in a state of, let's say, having lots and lots of resources, sometimes people or companies can get very complacent and they're not as efficient with what they have, which kind of makes sense. So there might be some truth in Bostrup's theory, although it is quite optimistic. Can this actually be sustained? Is there a point where food supply and population, don't follow this trajectory? So what are the theories behind this? Well, Malthus said, if you go back to what Malthus says here, and look at the graph here, okay, basically food cannot keep pace with the population. What is his idea here? Well, you have examples of famines across the world where people do not have access to food. People are starving, and there's just not enough food supply for them, particularly in less developed countries, in less economically developed countries. You have issues such as global warming, oil spillages, the depletion of the ozone layer, and desertification. So, whole areas of land that are drying up. Because of all of these things, it means there is less arable land, there is less land for farming, there is less land for food output. So, Malthusian supporters, so people who advocate his theory, say that it might be okay at the moment, but that doesn't mean there won't be future disasters. Now, the time I'm recording this, this is the 24th of March 2020. We're in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, and already you're seeing how this is affecting the world. I'm going to be interesting to look back at this recording a year from now, but you can see what effect this is having on output. Now, if again, if there's there might be a surplus of food. There might be shortages of food because of a supply chain. So actually, there might be a growing season in many countries that's had to be stopped short because people aren't there to pick the crops and to actually pick the food. So this could actually cause a lot of long-term effects on our food supply. And actually, future conflicts could be fought over water supply. So if water dries up in many places, this could lead to wars. This could lead to a lot of kind of political tensions between countries. Just as you've seen that we've had wars over oil. Now, water is such a precious resource that this could potentially happen in the future. But just because everything is okay now doesn't mean that what Malthus is saying won't happen in the future. It might not have happened yet, but maybe, perhaps we are at this point, and we could easily tip over onto here. So Boserup theory. Why is Boserup an optimist? Boserup disagrees with Malthus's look, and there are some reasons for this. There is enough food to feed the world, but the problem is it's not always where it's needed. Okay, so there may be an element of truth to this. So there may be famines in different countries, but there may be other countries that have a surplus of food. They have too much food. They don't need all that food. But the problem is getting that food to people in other countries who need it. So that doesn't mean we're not producing enough. It just means the food is not getting there in time, or it's being inefficiently transported. The other factor here is that Boserup would argue famine is more likely to be the result of a natural disaster or a war. So famine doesn't necessarily exist in isolation. There might be other reasons why people might be starving. So in a conflict zone where a country has taken a very, very severe hit to its economy, that the knock-on effect of that might be a famine, for example. Other things that are happening in the world: new farming machinery. Farmers can grow more and higher yields. Now, if you see productivity of farming over the last 100 years has increased massively in many countries. Many new technologies, new tractors and plows, particular chemicals that are being used in the soil, the fertilizers, all have had the benefit of increasing the amount of produce, amount of fruit or vegetables or coffee or whatever it is that's being grown, and actually more of it per square inch of that land. So this green revolution, producing seeds that can grow big, quicker and bigger. So we have a situation now where we have lots of companies using genetic modification, making more crops that won't get sick, won't get diseased, that will be bigger, and basically, again, making as much value as possible for the farmers, for the people who are growing these products. So actually we can produce much more food in the same area of land as we would have done hundreds of years ago. So even though there are lots more people, we can make lots more food using the same space. And so Boserup might argue that actually so it doesn't have to be a problem. The more people we are, the more we use this land in this way. Okay, so in a nutshell, that's those are the two theories that you need to know about. And also, the task that we're looking at today as well, looking at how this relates to particular food. So we mentioned food and population is the biggest issue. Although we know from our other work, we've looked at how big populations of big cities, how that affects the quality of life for people. But when we're talking about a food crisis, Now we're talking about hunger or malnutrition growing globally. So some countries may have had this food crisis already, or they have had this food crisis already, or perhaps are undergoing through this. So, like we said before, what could cause this global food crisis? Look at the theories that we spoke about already, but also what are other theories? Could it be war? Could it be political tension in that country? Could it be something logistical like transport of food? Is food actually able to be grown there? Or climate change could be an example as well. So you looked at Malthus and Boserup's theories. Now you've had some time to absorb both. Who do you think is right? Or which theory do you prefer? And have a think about why that is. And then have a think about these questions for next week. Okay, so look through the material and go through this as well. Okay, so let's end with this. Who do you think was right? Is there an optimum population? So is there kind of like a peak population number? Is there a number that if we go above this number, the earth is going to struggle? It's going to be difficult to feed all these people. And is necessity the mother of invention? What do we mean by this? We mean, do we need to get to a point where there's shortages for us to be creative and come up with better ideas? This is kind of something I mentioned earlier as well. So do you think this is something that will change in the future, or do you think this is something that's going to only get worse? Again, there's lots of views on this, so it'd be interesting to see your opinion. Okay. Now, there have been incidents of this. In 2007, the global wheat supply dwindled, and people were very concerned about this. And in your notes, you will see some reasons why. Okay, so come up with some facts about Malthus and Boserup, some reasons why the food might run out in the future, and why would conflict occur as a result of food? So if certain places don't get food, why do you think that could lead to war and conflict as well? Okay, so hopefully you have enough to be getting on with from there.